Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. We have covered this a lot on this show before, the worry over artificial intelligence, and our next guest is addressing that head on, especially in the education and economic sector. He says many students and parents are worried that AI will eliminate jobs. It will, but it will create new and different jobs for those who are prepared. So how can parents and educators use this new technology to empower the next generation? Joining us is education innovator and CEO of Optima, the company that is empowering immersive learning with cutting-edge virtual reality education solutions. Adam Mangana. Adam, great to have you here.
Amanda, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to talk about this topic and deliver a message of hope. It's not all gloom and doom around here.
I agree. And, I think back of innovations that have moved this country forward. I think of, westward expansion of the railway system, the combustion engine, electricity. AI is I think that we will look back on AI as one of those things that propelled us forward. But a lot of people, as I said in the introduction, are worried about their jobs getting taken over by AI. How can we be prepared for that to not happen, or at least to have something that we can do instead?
Yeah. The skepticism is healthy. If you remember, Socrates was skeptical of books. And so from the beginning of Western civilization, there has been this healthy skepticism. Socrates noted that men would lose their memories. They'd no longer be great orators. There will be some trade-offs with this new technology. But what is exciting is I see a future where we can make the American dream great again. And what we want to ultimately do is empower new opportunities that are going to bring higher wages. And so it's not AI that's going to take folks' jobs, but it is folks using AI that will replace those of us who've chosen not to educate ourselves and be able to use AI. So that's the nuanced difference. And I recognize that there's some hesitancy, but there is a pathway where we can promote AI literacy for free around the country. And that's what we're doing at Optima Ed.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to ask you about something that I wouldn't say that it's more of a concern of mine when it comes to, privacy and things like that, but I am very concerned about intellectual atrophy, that we are just going to outsource everything that we need to know instead of reading, like Socrates was worried about. Instead of reading and having an autodidactic approach to absorbing information, we're just going to spit it out and have AI handle it. How can we as individuals, if we are concerned about that, how can we make sure that we don't fall into that trap?
This is hugely important, right? Any technology that's consumed passively, we realize that we're actually the product as opposed to the energy behind driving the product or the vision behind the product. At the end of the day, the most human person and the most present person kind of wins in this conversation. And so how do we not become the product? Well, we have to be the most present. And that means that we're not just consuming AI, but we're using it as a tool for the sake of making things more efficient, for the sake of, saving time, right? Those are the reasons why we would use AI. We wouldn't outsource, to your point, the thinking. We wouldn't have it write a term paper for us. So there are very specific ways in which we want to be able to use these tools. And that's really important. The tool is the tool, but the way in which we use the tool is the most important part of the education process behind it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people refer to it as cognitive offloading when you're using AI so much, even for just really simplistic tasks or queries. I want to ask you about jobs out there that are not susceptible to AI replacement. Is there any job out there that is stable and not going to be replaced by AI?
I love this question. We have a number of folks teaching kindergarten right now that should not be worried at all. AI will not be a very good classroom manager anytime soon. But I would say, a lot of folks are thinking very deeply about the trades. And, in our own philosophy, it's ironic. I think any job that is remote, where most of your job requires clicking a mouse, that can be automated. But those jobs that require more kinesthetic inputs, right, physical inputs, those jobs that require a more human experience, like I mentioned, teaching kindergarten, right, these things that require the common courtesy of connection are going to be the last things that we decide to automate. I will also say that there'll be new jobs created, right? There'll be jobs related specifically to agentic architecture. It won't be AI in the form that most of our listeners are currently familiar with, these kind of chatbots, but it will be AI in the form of agents that ultimately add to this level of kind of productivity. And so people that are architecting these agents together to find ways to make, business models more efficient are going to always be valuable. But this is the key piece. If you are in the business of solving problems for people, you will always have opportunity in this country. And so
yes,
AI will not replace the ability to solve problems. It will automate things and it will augment our ability to do those things. But if you're in the business of trying to solve problems for people, you will always be valuable in a marketplace.
Adam, before I let you go, this youngest generation, they are already growing up with so much technology. How do we prepare kids who aren't even old enough to really even have cell phones? How do we prepare them for the AI revolution and get them accustomed to using it as a tool and not as something that they just outsource for everything they need done?
Amanda, you actually had great insight into this question. We have to not outsource our thinking, right? And so a great way to do that is actually familiarize ourselves with the great books. Read Socrates, read Epictetus, read Plato. These are time-tested pieces of content that were created by the best thinkers who've ever lived in our society. And ultimately, right, what is AI doing? It's taking huge amounts of data and it's pattern recognizing, right? And so our ability to be more human, to think not what can we build, but what should we build, to think ethically, that's going to be very difficult to disrupt. And so the ways in which we prepare ourselves is actually go back to the humanities and understand empathy and the soft skills that are very difficult for AI to replace.
No, I think that's so incredible. A few years ago, I got a bee in my bonnet and decided to stumble my way through Dante's Inferno again. And it took me a while, but I was so glad that I went back to something that it had been literally decades since I had visited it. So that's a great idea. All of these are such keen insight. Education innovator and CEO of Optima, Adam Mangana, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Amanda, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, stay tuned because we're going to have much more for you coming up on the other side.
Look, folks, I don't care how savvy you are. Medicare is confusing. There's Part A, Part B, supplements, Advantage plans. It's a maze, right? And here's what most people don't realize. A lot of Americans think once they choose a plan, they're stuck. That's not always true. If you have a Medicare supplement plan, you may be able to review and change your coverage at any time of the year. So if your premiums have gone up, you're not sure your plan is still right for you, you don't have to just sit there and accept it. That's why you need to know about my good friends at AMAC. They're the conservative alternative to AARP with more than 2 million members, myself included. They fight for the same values we talk about here: limited government, personal freedom, and common sense. When you call AMAC, you're talking to licensed advisors who will walk you through your options and help you find the plan that actually fits your life. No pressure, no confusion, just real help. Call 800-901-8893 or visit amac.us/Solomon. The call is free and it can save you money. You're not stuck. Let AMAC help you make the right choice.